Greetings everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm your host, Captain Ryan. Today's YouTube video comes from subscriber Apple1024. Apple is in his Tier 9 US battleship, the USS Iowa, here in World of Warships. The map is Ice Islands, and it's Domination Match Mode. As the battle gets underway, his team is, for the most part, headed down to the C cap point. Unfortunately, not a lot of members of his team look like they're trying to turn towards the B cap point. And that is going to come in and play a critical factor at the end of this battle. There are not too many destroyers in this battle, which is actually pretty good, especially if you're playing in a battleship, because generally that means you don't have to worry about walls of skill headed your way every few seconds. Apple has also decided that he is heading down to the C cap point, and that's when he spots an enemy cruiser that is now broadside on, so he fires off those beautiful 16-inch guns. The Iowa's guns do have wonderful penetration on anything that turns broadside, and he manages to citadel that unlucky cruiser. More importantly, he manages to fire his guns without taking any return fire, at least not directly, though somebody did shoot at him, but he's also in a position behind an iceberg here where he can continue to put rounds downrange, but due to the nature of that iceberg, isn't actually being detected by anything. More shots out there at that cruiser. Can he cause some serious problems? Unfortunately, almost all overpins. No big citadels there. That's a little disappointment, but that's the RNGs that you have to deal with when you're playing a battleship. Sometimes you hit amazing citadels for no apparent reason, and sometimes you don't. That group of enemy ships, though, has managed to beach themselves on each other, basically running into each other, and neither of them is moving. So he gets shots back out there at the enemy, does cause some more damage, actually to both of those ships, thanks to the dispersion there, but again, doesn't manage to citadel anything. Again, really kind of disappointing. The enemy team manages to capture the A cap point, while Apple's team is still in the process of capping C. Now he's got himself a broadside Iowa to shoot out, and if anybody who's ever played the Iowa or against the Iowa knows, a broadside Iowa is usually a nice, fat, juicy target to shoot at. Unfortunately, he's got a lot of shatters on that and doesn't end up causing a lot of damage, which is, again, really disappointing. But speaking of the Iowa and her broadside, in the upcoming patch, the Iowa and the Montana, and hopefully the Missouri as well, are all having their Citadel armor fixed. All of that Citadel armor is going to get lowered, and it's going to be more like the North Carolina. So it's still going to be possible to get Citadeled, especially from range, but you're not going to take so much damage when you're closer and broadside. It's also worth noting that that means that even with the lull pen of the Yamato, you're going to get regular penetrations, but they're not going to be able to quadruple citadel you through the bow at close range, just due to the lowering of the citadel there, though you probably still will take some major damage when they do that. Again, tries to get shots out at that Iowa, and again, doesn't manage to citadel him. Apple's team manages to secure the C cap point, but they also manage to lose a ship. And they've also managed to kill one enemy ship, which is good. It looks like that was the cruiser that Apple had been pecking at and had citadeled early on. Now, I'd like to point out that it's only a few minutes into the game, and Apple has already managed a pretty respectable 60,000 damage done. And to give you an idea of why that's respectable, I do believe that the server average for the Iowa, at least on the North American server, is something like 60,000 damage. So he's already managed to do as much damage as the server average here in the first few minutes of this battle. So you can already tell this battle is going to go pretty well for Apple, assuming he keeps up this rate of fire, and assuming that the enemy doesn't seem to be particularly interested in shooting at him. That's the other advantage to having a low destroyer game, is that, well, the enemy battleships tend not to shoot at other battleships. They tend to shoot at the cruisers, because cruisers are going to be focusing all their high explosive spam onto them, and it's annoying. So they want to take them out of the game quickly. He gets more shots off there at that cruiser. Again, causing a lot of overpins, causing a lot of problems, but not managing any delicious fat citadels. His team is pretty much all clustered down here at the C cap point, and they really do need to turn and start focusing on the B cap point at this point. But as you can see, there are still ships that are headed towards the C cap point, when in reality they just need to turn and stand there. Well, the team that's back behind him at the C cap point needs to roll up and start dealing with that, and allow Apple in the Iowa on this side to just kind of continue causing flanking shots. That way you get them in the pincer movement, and the enemy battleships are forced to either angle towards the Iowa or angle against the destroyers and the cruisers and possibly the other battleships. Apple does manage to secure his first kill of the game with another citadel taking out an enemy cruiser. It's always nice when you finally get that first kill, especially after you've done a pretty sizable amount of damage. I know I've had games where I've done well over 100,000+ damage and didn't manage to get a single kill in the game. Enemy team manages to take out yet another ship, but of course they're equal on ships, but because Apple's team still does not have 2 caps, because the enemy team has 2 of those caps, it means the enemy team is up on points. Apple spots an enemy destroyer up here, and he's trying to get shots off, but that destroyer is maneuvering pretty hard, and it's throwing off his aim. And of course, that's a harbor offs anyway, which means even if he does hit him, if you can't kill him outright, the guy's probably going to repair. But he's got to be careful. Here come some torpedoes. Can he torpedo beats this? It looks like he might be able to. Ooh, it's going to be tight. Ah, but he does manage to do it right between the lines. And there's the other enemy destroyer. Now, it's important that his team shoot at him, and this enemy destroyer maneuvering hard if they can get the shots on him. Ooh, but he is managing to dodge all of those shells, which is really actually more annoying than anything. But his team absolutely needs to focus that destroyer down, because destroyers in games, especially when you've lost your destroyers, are incredibly lethal things, because all they have to do is really stay outside of their detection range and continuously spam torpedoes at you in order to give you a bad day or pick off what's already been wounded. Enemy North Carolina up here is broadside on to Apple's Iowa, and like I was saying, the North Carolina has her citadel lower than the rest, but even at these kinds of ranges against those 16-inch guns, citadels can occur, and Apple manages to secure a citadel on that particular North Carolina. There's some low health ships back over there, and at this point I'd kind of be looking at maybe finishing off the low health battleship that's sitting behind that iceberg, because he is still moving. But it's also important to remember that you do need to provide support for your team. And this is kind of where Apple's team is falling apart a little bit. They're doing a pretty good job of keeping the team scores even, but they're not doing a very good job of utilizing their advantages, especially on one side of the map, and pushing up. As you can see, Apple is still continuing to head the opposite direction of the cap. In reality, he should be turning around and heading into that cap zone and trying to get those points back. And if he does that with the rest of his cruisers here, he can honestly, hopefully, deflect incoming fire from them and force the enemy to shoot at him. And since he still has the health at this point in the battle, which is also an important factor, he can honestly afford to take that kind of damage, so long as he keeps his cruisers alive. He continues getting shots out at these ships that are hiding back behind that iceberg that are challenging his team on that side of the map. Does manage to hit him, but does do some ricochets and gets some over penetrations and doesn't do a lot of damage. Again, a little unfortunate there. Now, I think it's funny if you look at the minimap situation, the enemy team and Apple's team have effectively managed to switch sides on the map. And I think that's always funny when that happens. He's got a broadside Baltimore up here. He gets his forward guns off, and that Baltimore has just started moving forward, so he does aim a little bit forward, manages to hit him, but only manages to over-penetrate. And again, unfortunately doesn't manage to cause those nice fat citadels. Somehow, though, both teams still surprisingly equal. But again, looking at the situation, Apple's team really needs to push that B cap point. These two battleships that are down here absolutely have to get in there because the enemy team still has that points lead, and they're going to continue to maintain it so long as the B cap point remains in their control. Apple gets more shots off at this Baltimore yet again, and again that Baltimore broadside on, but this time he finds his mark and manages to citadel that poor ship. But it looks like his rear guns don't manage to hit that cruiser. Again, playing the movie villain role, each member of his team is pushing into the B cap point one ship at a time. They need to go in all at once, focus down one ship, and then focus down the next ship, and focus down the next ship, if they want any chance of securing that B cap point and securing any kind of chance for a victory. Again, the team scores still equal as both teams manage to kill yet more ships of each other. The B cap point now being contested, but it might be too little too late as the enemy team still holding on to that points lead by at least 200 points. But low health North Carolina up here, and that North Carolina is in range of the Iowa's secondaries. Now, looking at the range here with the Iowa secondaries and the fact that they're focusing down that North Carolina, I'd gather a pretty reasonable bet here that Apple has his Iowa spec'd as a secondary build. Most people don't think that that's a viable way to play this ship, but I disagree. With a secondary build spec with your captain skills and the modules, you can get the Iowa's secondaries out to 9.1 kilometers. And you have 5 of these 5-inch dual-purpose, dual-mounted guns on each side. So you effectively have the equivalent of an Atlanta on each side of your ship with 9-kilometer range. You can really cause some serious hurt to whatever you want to that gets within that zone. Enemy team manages to kill some more of Apple's ships, and now they're in the process of capping C, and that's going to be a serious problem for Apple's team because that means they're not gaining any more points. But they do manage to kill what was down there that was contesting it. Apple helps take out that North Carolina, but he doesn't get the kill on it, which is, again, a little disappointing. He gets a ship turned here, trying to angle against that battleship in the distance, and he's letting his secondaries mostly take care of the work on this Baltimore. But the Baltimore gets taken out thanks to the friendly cruisers behind him. And now he's got himself a nice broadside-on battleship to shoot at. But he does have to be careful because that battleship's got 16-inch guns as well and is firing back. But he manages to citadel him twice and causes some serious problems. And that battleship's going to think twice, hopefully, about sailing broadside onto a battleship. Because no matter what ship you're in, that's a paddling. And yes, he has started to angle slightly. Now, Apple is on fire, and he's burning down pretty heavily. This is one of those situations where my nervous habit of hitting the repair button right after being set on fire probably would have come in handy, as the cruiser that set him on fire died shortly thereafter. And it could have saved Apple some health and not needing to repair it, or being able to repair more health after the repair came off cooldown. Now, he's trying to capture the B cap point, but because he's the only one up here, and because he's in a battleship, he's obviously exposed to anything that wants to roll up in here and shoot at him, which is going to constantly reset him. Again, the teams are equal, but so long as the enemy ships can see him and continuously reset him, and this time the enemy aircraft carrier, which is the first time we've really seen him pop up in this game, has decided to take some interest in him. He manages to secure his third kill in the game here, or his second kill in the game, by taking out that enemy battleship. And now he's got an enemy battleship directly in front of him. But he's also got more planes coming in here. His repair is just off cooldown as the bombers hit him and set him on fire, and that is really, really disappointing. Again, if he'd put out that fire initially, his repair would have just come off cooldown, and he could have taken both of those fires out right away. Manages to secure a devastating strike, and this is his third kill, as he effectively citadels that Iowa right in the magazines and finish him off. That leaves the enemy team with just 2 ships at this point, and at least one of them is nowhere to be seen, and one of them was last spotted on the other side of the map. But again, the problem here is that his team has failed to secure the B cap point. They've all just clustered down and stayed by C. And the enemy team is definitely up on points, and there's not a lot of time left in this game. Now he starts recovering health here, but he's got a major problem as the enemy aircraft carrier is sending more planes his way and is definitely going to pick on him in this particular case. Oh, this is bad. He takes 2 hits here, and unfortunately that carrier knows what he's doing with his drops and manages to get 3 more shots on the other side and finishes Apple off before he can secure the B cap point. Again, looking at the situation, if the friendly cruisers on Apple's team had pushed up with him, or if he'd pushed up with his friendly cruisers initially when, you know, each successive cruiser was pushing into the B cap point to try and cap it, he could have better supported him, and the cruisers could have better supported him, and they probably could have shot down those planes before they managed to kill him, leaving him in the game, leaving their team with a bit more of a points advantage going into the last few minutes of this battle. And it's entirely possible that they could have capped the B cap point earlier and equaled out this points balance. As a result of now only capturing it with not a lot of time left on the clock, the question is whether or not they're actually going to be able to equal out and surpass the enemy team's points. But again, looking at the situation, the enemy team still has the A cap point, so they're still going to continue to gain points. So at most every 3 seconds, they're only going to be gaining 3 more points than the enemy. And they're over 100 points difference with less than a minute left on the clock. So it's basically not going to happen. There's no way at this point that they're going to be able to win unless one of the ships pops up and they can kill him instantly. At this point, the enemy team only has to survive. They don't have to do anything but stay alive, and they secure their victory. And the enemy team knows it, so nobody's firing anything. The aircraft carrier is well hidden and just sending his bombers to harass. But they don't actually need to kill anything, they don't need to do anything, they just need to not die. And as the final countdown goes out there, you can see his team fails to secure victory, even though they have more ships and they have more caps. So an unfortunate defeat for Apple 1024, but look at that, 300,000 damage done, 11 citadels in the game, Confederate high caliber and devastating strike. But I want to call attention here to his credit earned there. 789,000 credits earned in an Iowa on a defeat. And that's going to be an important number. Top of his team for XP earned and second for XP earned in the game total. The only player to actually outmatch his XP was on the enemy team, and that player is dead. So overall, a very impressive game for Apple. Anyway, that's it for today's video, folks. If you like the video, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment down below. If you'd like to get semi-regular channel news and updates, you can do so by liking and following me on Facebook. If you'd like to help support me in the channel, you can do so by becoming my supporter on Patreon. If you've got a replay like this one that you'd like to see featured on my channel, you can do so by sending it to my email, And if you'd like to watch me play World of Warships live, usually Sundays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, you can do so by following me on Twitch. You can find the links for all of those in the video description down below. Now going back to that credit earn, take a look at that. He earned that many credits on a loss in a non-premium ship with a standard account. Look at what he would have earned with a premium account. That could have been a 1,000,000 credit loss in an Iowa. Imagine what it would have been if it had been a win. Anyway, that's all for today, folks. I'll see you next time. This is Captain Rye, signing off.